Have you ever met a person who stays truly unshakable when life punches hardest? Why do their setbacks seem to bounce off while every careless word slices right through you? What if the chase for invulnerability is the very thing keeping you fragile? Stick with me and you'll uncover why the control illusion floods your body with silent stress. A simple inner map, persona shadow, projection that shows exactly where pain is born. 3 daily habits that turn raw awareness into calm, lasting strength. But first meet Mark, a rising Silicon Valley manager who did everything by the book. Perfect resume, perfect smile, perfect armor. One Friday afternoon, a single line of code failed, an investor call went south, and the image he'd polished for years shattered in under an hour. That breakdown didn't ruin Mark. It revealed the real battle he'd been fighting all along inside. His story is our doorway into a deeper truth. Resilience isn't about thicker skin, it's about clearer sight, ready to step through. Let's dive in. Have you noticed how the harder you grip the steering wheel of life, the more every pothole rattles your bones? Mark, the Silicon Valley manager we met a minute ago, thought control was safety. Each morning, he rehearsed perfect answers, power posed before meetings, cross-checked every emoji in his texts. Yet the day that single bug slipped into production, his heart raced so hard, the smartwatch triggered an abnormal rhythm alert. Why? Because the fortress he built was made of glass. When we chase invulnerability, we wire the nervous system for hypervigilance. Cortisol stays high. The amygdala scans for threats that don't exist. Instead of feeling sturdy, we become brittle, like a porcelain cup, wrapped in bubble wrap, terrified of cracks. Jung called this the complex of superiority, an ego pumped full of air, so it won't feel small. Yet one pinprick of criticism deflates everything. Think of the friend who tracks every read receipt but panics if a reply takes longer than 5 minutes. The control looks like confidence, but it's fueled by the fear of being ignored. The moment silence arrives, anxiety floods in proof that the armor never made them stronger. It only amplified the impact. True resilience begins when you loosen the grip. Swap the question. How can I stop bad things from happening? For how quickly can I meet whatever shows up with clarity? The shift is subtle, but it moves you from porcelain to tempered glass, flexible, still transparent, far harder to shatter. So if control isn't the answer, where does all that hidden tension actually live? To find it, we need a map of the inner landscape, persona shadow complex, projection, the very terrain we'll chart. Stay with me. The real adventure starts there. Have you ever had a moment where someone said something small, something almost harmless, and yet it hit you like a punch to the chest? You smiled, you nodded, but later that night, you couldn't sleep. That moment didn't just bother you, it unsettled you. And deep down, you didn't understand why. That's not random. That's a signal. And if we want to stop being emotionally hijacked by small things, we need to understand the battlefield inside us. Carl Jung mapped this inner world using 4 powerful concepts: persona, shadow, complex, and projection. And once you learn to recognize them, you stop reacting blindly and start responding with clarity. Let's begin with the persona. It's the mask you wear to survive. Not in a fake way, just in a functional way. It's how you present yourself at work, with friends, on social media. It's the version of you that says, "I've got it together," even when inside you're barely holding on. For Mark, the manager we met earlier, his persona was the confident, competent leader, the one who always had answers, never showed weakness, and never asked for help. But the problem with the persona is this: Everything that doesn't fit inside that polished version of you, your fear, insecurity, doubt, vulnerability gets pushed away. And where does it go? Into the shadow. The shadow is everything you don't want to admit about yourself. It's the anger you hide, the jealousy you deny, the pain you refuse to feel. It's not evil. It's just unacknowledged. For Mark, he'd buried his exhaustion, his need for rest, and his fear of being not enough so deep that when someone joked that he was too sensitive, it didn't feel like a joke. It felt like an attack. That's the next part of the map, the complex. A complex is like an emotional landmine. It's a part of your psyche charged with old pain. You may not remember planting it, but you'll definitely feel it when it explodes. Mark's reaction to the joke wasn't just about that moment. It was tied to a lifetime of being told to man up, to be strong, to never cry. The joke touched something ancient, and that's what made it so powerful. And finally, we have projection. This one's sneaky. Projection happens when you see something in someone else that you've rejected in yourself. For example, Mark often called his teammate lazy because she clocked out at 5 p.m., never replied after hours, and didn't seem to care about appearing ambitious. But what really bothered Mark wasn't her laziness, it was her freedom. She embodied a part of him he'd exiled, the right to slow down, to rest, to be enough without constantly proving it. Here's the thing. These four forces, persona, shadow, complex, and projection, they shape how you see the world, how you react, and how you suffer. But once you begin to name them, you begin to free yourself from them. You stop mistaking your triggers for truth. You stop blaming others for the storm you're carrying inside. And most importantly, you start listening not just to what hurts, but to why it hurts. Because pain isn't just pain. It's a message. And that's where we're headed next. In the next section, we'll explore why your pain, far from being a weakness, is often your most honest guide, and how learning to read it can change everything. Pain is not your enemy, but most of us were raised to believe that it is. From the time we were little, we were taught that crying is weakness, that discomfort should be avoided, that if something hurts, it must be bad. So we learned to run, to distract, to numb. We trained ourselves to avoid suffering like it was a disease. But here's the truth. Pain doesn't come to punish you. It comes to inform you. Let's go back to Mark. After that failed meeting, he didn't just feel disappointed. He felt hollow, tight in his chest, tired in a way sleep couldn't fix. He tried meditation supplements, even yoga, but nothing really helped. Because the pain wasn't in his body. It was in his story, in the meaning he attached to failure, in the deep, unspoken belief that if I'm not perfect, I'm not enough. That's what Carl Jung meant when he said, until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate. You see, the body keeps the score, but it doesn't speak in words. It speaks in symptoms. Anxiety, fatigue, restlessness, insomnia, that tight throat before a phone call, that pit in your stomach when someone criticizes you. All of it data, and yet most of us don't listen. We silence the message. We power through. But what if we didn't? What if, instead of pushing the pain away, we got curious about it? Let's take a real-world example. Sarah, a high-performing lawyer, began having panic attacks every Sunday evening. She blamed work stress. But after weeks of journaling and reflecting, she realized it wasn't about the workload, it was the silence. The moment she stopped doing the emptiness came. That emptiness was grief, unprocessed sadness from losing her father 2 years earlier. Grief she'd never given herself time to feel. Her body had been trying to tell her all along. This is what Jung pointed to when he said, "Depression is like a woman in black. If she shows up, don't send her away. Invite her in, offer her a seat, and ask what she's here to tell you." Because here's the shift. Pain isn't weakness. Pain is intelligence. When we stop judging it and start reading it, we transform it into guidance. A few ways to start. Keep a pain journal. Not just what hurts, but when and what was happening just before. Try placing a hand on the part of your body that aches and simply ask, "What are you trying to show me?" And most of all, pause. Breathe. Feel without rushing to fix, because pain only screams when it's been ignored for too long. And if you listen closely enough, it will take you somewhere deeper. That's exactly where we're going next. In the following section, we'll begin crossing that hidden valley, inside the space where our old identities start to crack and something far more authentic begins to rise. It's not easy, but it's the part of the journey that sets everything else free. So what happens when we stop running from pain and start listening to it? Something begins to shift. Quietly at first, then profoundly. This shift is what Carl Jung called individuation, the process of becoming whole, not perfect, not untouchable, just real. It's a journey inward, where the self no longer tries to meet the world's expectations, but begins to uncover its own truth. And like any meaningful journey, individuation happens in stages. Today, we'll walk through 4 key milestones. You might find yourself in one of them right now. The first is the cracking of the persona. This is where the outer mask, the version of you the world praises, starts to feel heavy, fake, or exhausting. You may still play the role, but inside, you whisper, "This isn't me." For Mark, it began with burnout. He was showing up smiling, delivering, but everything felt hollow. He wasn't living anymore. He was performing. And the first crack in the mask came when he finally admitted, "I don't want to be this person anymore." It was terrifying. But also, the first honest moment in years. The second milestone is the encounter with the shadow. This is when you begin to notice all the things you've rejected in yourself. Jealousy, fear, rage, sadness, and instead of pushing them away, you start to name them. This doesn't feel noble at first. It feels messy. You might write in your journal, "I hate how insecure I get when I'm not in control and feel ashamed." But the moment you admit the truth, you stop being ruled by it. For Mark, this meant owning up to the fact that he resented others who seemed more balanced, because secretly, he wanted that life too. The third stage is dialogue with the inner opposite, what Jung called the anima or animus. This is the part of you that's been underdeveloped. If you've lived your life over asserting, maybe it's time to soften. If you've always been agreeable, maybe it's time to learn how to say no. This stage often shows up through intense emotional triggers, especially in relationships. You meet someone who activates you, not because of who they are, but because of what they represent, a part of yourself you've never integrated. For Mark, it was a romantic partner who embodied everything he suppressed: creativity, softness, emotional fluidity. Being with her challenged him to grow, not by changing her, but by expanding himself. And then the fourth milestone, a brief, powerful glimpse of the self. This doesn't come with fireworks. It often comes in stillness. A moment where you're walking through chaos, but you feel calm. Something inside you says, I can face this. I don't need to prove anything. I'm okay as I am. It's not ego. It's not pride. It's presence. For Mark, this came one evening as he sat alone in a quiet cafe after turning down a promotion he didn't want. He realized for the first time that he wasn't failing. He was finally choosing truth over image. These 4 milestones don't unfold in a straight line. They loop, they repeat. Sometimes you'll feel like you're back at square one, but you're not. You're just going deeper, and with each layer you uncover, you become less reactive, less afraid, and more grounded. The lesson here isn't that you must become someone. It's that you already are someone. You just need to meet yourself beneath the noise. And that brings us to the next part of the journey. What do you do with all this awareness? How do you live it, not just as theory, but as strength? In the next section, we'll explore how awareness becomes your emotional armor. Not the kind that hides you, but the kind that lets nothing shake you from within. Once you've walked through the valley, once you've looked into your own shadows and sat in silence, with what used to scare you, something inside you begins to settle. You realize that strength isn't something you perform anymore. It's something you are. Not because you're invincible, but because you are finally aware. And that awareness, that is your true armor. But let's be clear. Awareness is not a concept. It's a practice. It's not what you know intellectually. It's what you return to in the moment when your heart starts racing, when your insecurities flare, when the old story tries to pull you back. So how do we make this awareness part of our everyday life? First, learn to recognize your parts. Inside, each of us are different voices. The inner critic, the people pleaser, the perfectionist, the wounded child. We're not broken. We're just made of many layers. Try sitting down, closing your eyes, and asking, who's speaking right now? When you feel anxious or defensive, don't fight the feeling. Ask, which part of me is trying to protect me? That one question creates a pause. And in that pause, you stop reacting and start responding. Second, train yourself in presence. One of the most powerful tools you can use is a daily grounding ritual. It could be 5 minutes each morning. One hand on your chest, one on your belly, breathing deeply and repeating a simple phrase like, right now, I am safe. I am enough. It sounds small, but over time, it rewires your nervous system to respond with calm instead of panic. Third, integrate both Jungian depth and Stoic clarity. Before a difficult conversation, try this. Imagine the worst-case scenario. Let your unconscious paint it fully. Then ask, if that happened, who would I become? Now, you're not just preparing for the outcome, you're training your identity to remain stable even when life isn't. This is emotional immunity, not detachment, not suppression, but inner clarity. Because when you know what triggers you, when you understand the story behind your reactions, the world no longer pulls your strings. People may still criticize you. Challenges will still come. But your self-worth is no longer tied to any of it. Your anchor is internal. And yes, you'll still feel pain. You'll still fall, but you won't shatter. Because you've stopped being a prisoner of your past and started becoming the protector of your peace. So the question now becomes, what do we do with this strength? Do we keep it quietly to ourselves? Or do we use it to help others find their way too? In the final part of this journey, we'll talk about how to carry this awareness forward, not just for you, but as a new way of showing up in the world. Because when clarity becomes your way of being, you no longer need to control life. to feel safe. You just live. And nothing outside of you has the power to shake who you truly are. Now that you've made it this far, there's something you need to hear clearly. And without noise, you are no longer the same person who pressed play on this video. You've walked through the illusion of control, seen the hidden architecture of your inner world, listened to the voice beneath your pain, and found strength not in becoming untouchable, but in becoming whole. This awareness changes things. Quietly. Permanently. But now comes the real question. What will you do with it? Because awareness is not just for self-soothing. It's not just about fixing your life. It's a foundation, a center. And from that center, you can build something much bigger than yourself. You see, the world doesn't need more perfect people. It needs more conscious ones. People who feel without collapsing. People who listen without reacting. People who lead not with noise, but with presence. And that's what this is really about, creating a movement. A movement of people who no longer pretend to be strong, but who are strong because they are honest. Who no longer run from the dark, but learn to walk through it with their eyes open. So, if something in you stirred today, if a part of you whispered, "This is what I've been needing to hear," then don't let this be just another inspiring video that fades tomorrow. Make it real. Choose awareness actively, daily. Here's how you can start. Share in the comments. One insight that struck you most, and one small way you'll practice that awareness this week. Maybe it's taking 5 quiet minutes before bed. Maybe it's speaking your truth in a conversation you've been avoiding. Maybe it's just noticing the part of you that gets defensive and choosing to breathe instead. And if you feel alone in this journey, know that you're not. There's a growing community of people right here who are tired of wearing masks, tired of chasing perfection, and ready to live with truth. Let's meet each other there. Let's start something that doesn't stop at insight, but becomes embodied clarity. And remember, the next video will take this journey even deeper. We'll explore how projection, the mirror of all relationships, reveals the parts of you you've yet to love. So don't stop here. Keep going. Because the work doesn't end, it deepens. And from now on, you don't walk that path blindly. You walk it awake.